You know what you should be doing. You've known for months, maybe years. The clarity isn't the problem. You can see the path. You understand the steps. You've made the plans, set the goals, downloaded the apps, bought the journals. You've done everything except the one thing that actually matters. You haven't started. Or you started and stopped so many times that starting has become its own kind of ritual. A performance of intention that leads nowhere. This isn't laziness, though. That's the word you use when you hate yourself at night. This isn't lack of ambition. Your ambition is the problem. It's so large, so vivid, so consuming that it's become a replacement for action rather than a catalyst for it. You live in the future you're planning to create, and that future is so compelling, so detailed, so perfect in your imagination, that the present moment, with its demands and its discomfort and its requirement that you actually do something, feels disappointing by comparison. This is the paralysis of potential, the particular hell of knowing you're capable of more while doing less, of having the vision without the execution, of being the person who could but doesn't. And the worst part isn't the inaction itself, it's the gap between who you believe you are and what your behavior reveals. That gap is where the shame lives, where the self-loathing grows, where the story you tell yourself about yourself begins to fracture. Let's be precise about what's actually happening in your mind, because calling it laziness or lack of discipline misses the real mechanism. You're not failing to act because you don't care. You're failing to act because you care too much. Because the stakes you've assigned to your actions are so high that taking action feels like risking your entire identity. Here's how it works. You've built an identity around your potential. You're the person who could do great things if you just applied yourself. The one with the ideas, the vision, the talent that hasn't been properly channeled yet. This identity is comfortable. It allows you to feel superior without the vulnerability of actually testing yourself. It lets you critique others' work from the position of someone who would do it better if they bothered to try. It gives you the ego benefits of accomplishment without the actual accomplishment. But here's the problem. The moment you actually try, you risk discovering that your potential was a story you were telling yourself, that maybe you're not as capable as you thought, that your ideas don't translate into execution as smoothly as they did in your imagination, that the gap between vision and ability is larger than you wanted to admit. So you don't try, not consciously. You don't sit down and decide to protect your ego. But your brain, brilliant at protecting you from threats, perceives the risk and creates obstacles. Suddenly you don't have time. Suddenly other things are more urgent. Suddenly you need to do more research, make a better plan, wait for better conditions. These aren't excuses in the traditional sense. They feel legitimate. They feel like wisdom. But they're protection mechanisms, your brain keeping you safe from the possibility that you might not be as special as you've believed. Let's talk about what perfectionism actually is, because you probably think it's about having high standards. It's not. Perfectionism is the refusal to begin or complete anything that might reveal you're not perfect. It's the insistence that your first attempt should be your best attempt. It's the belief that if you can't do something excellently, you shouldn't do it at all. This sounds like integrity. It sounds like refusing to compromise your vision. But it's actually cowardice dressed up as principle, because perfectionism protects you from the fundamental reality of skill development, that you have to be bad at something before you can be good at it. That competence is built through repeated failure, that mastery requires you to produce work that embarrasses you, that falls short, that reveals the gap between your taste and your current ability. You probably have excellent taste. You can look at others' work and immediately see what's wrong with it, what could be better, where they've fallen short. This taste is valuable. But it's also a trap, because when you turn that critical eye on your own work, especially your early work, it doesn't measure up. And rather than recognizing this as a normal part of the learning curve, you interpret it as evidence that you shouldn't be doing this, that you don't have what it takes, that your vision was better than your capability. So you stop, you tell yourself you'll come back, when you're better prepared, when you've learned more, when conditions are more favorable. But the conditions are never more favorable. The preparation is never sufficient, because what you're actually waiting for is the ability to produce excellent work without going through the phase of producing mediocre work. And that's not how human learning operates. The only way through is through. And perfectionism makes sure you never start. Here's something you probably haven't considered. Your ambition might be the problem, not the solution. Not because wanting more is bad, but because the type of ambition you're carrying is paralyzing rather than motivating. It's outcome-focused rather than process-focused. It's about who you'll be rather than what you'll do. And that orientation sets you up for perpetual dissatisfaction. When your ambition is outcome-focused, every small action feels insufficient. Writing one page doesn't matter when you're trying to write a book. Making one sales call doesn't matter when you're trying to build an empire. Going to the gym once doesn't matter when you're trying to transform your body. The gap between the action and the outcome is so vast that the action feels meaningless. And why do something that feels meaningless but outcome-focused? Ambition has another problem. It makes your sense of worth contingent on achieving the outcome. And outcomes are largely outside your control. You can do everything right and still fail because of timing, luck, circumstances beyond your influence. When your identity is wrapped up in outcomes you can't control, you're setting yourself up for anxiety that prevents action. Because every action becomes a referendum on your worth. And who wants to risk that? Process-focused ambition is different. It's about finding meaning in the doing itself. Not because the outcome doesn't matter, but because you can't control it. What you can control is whether you show up, whether you do the work, whether you honor your commitment to the process, regardless of how far you are from the goal. This shift from outcome to process, from who you'll be to what you do today, is what allows action to happen. Because when the action itself is the point, there's no threshold of significance it has to reach. It just has to happen. Let's address the consumption problem. Because you're probably drowning in content about productivity, success, motivation. You watch videos, listen to podcasts, read articles, all promising to unlock the secret to finally getting started. And this consumption feels productive. It feels like you're taking your goals seriously, but it's actually another form of avoidance. Consuming content about doing is not the same as doing. It's preparation that never ends. It's learning without application, and it serves a specific psychological function. It makes you feel like you're moving forward without actually having to risk anything. You can spend hours watching someone else's success story and feel inspired. But inspiration is just a feeling, and feelings fade, and when they do, you're back where you started, except you've lost hours you could have spent acting. The uncomfortable truth is that you already know what to do. You don't need another video explaining the importance. Consistency. You don't need another article about morning routines or productivity hacks. You need to stop consuming information and start producing results. The information isn't the obstacle, the execution is, and no amount of additional information will make execution easier. It will just give you more sophisticated ways to avoid it. This is hard to accept because learning feels good. It feels like progress, but it's progress toward knowing more, not progress toward accomplishing anything. And at some point, knowing more becomes a liability, because the more you know about what could go wrong, the more variables you think you need to account for, the more prepared you think you need to be before you start. Ignorance, paradoxically, can be an advantage. The person who doesn't know how hard something is just starts, and by the time they realize the difficulty, they're already in motion. You've studied so much that you've talked yourself out of trying. Let's talk about what happens on a neurological level when you consistently choose comfort over action. Because your brain is learning every single day, whether you realize it or not. And right now, it's learning that your goals don't actually matter. Every time you say you're going to do something and then don't, you're teaching your brain that your word to yourself is meaningless. Every time you choose the easy option over the hard one, you're strengthening the neural pathway that associates relief with avoidance. Every time you distract yourself instead of focusing, you're rewarding distraction and punishing concentration. This isn't conscious, but it's powerful. Your brain operates on a simple principle. Behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. When you avoid your work and scroll social media, you get an immediate dopamine hit. Your brain registers this as reward. When you sit down to do difficult work, you feel discomfort. Your brain registers this as punishment. So it learns to steer you toward avoidance and away from effort. Not because it's trying to sabotage you, because it's trying to help you feel good. But feeling good in the moment and building a life you're proud of are often incompatible. Breaking this pattern requires deliberately creating different associations. You have to make action rewarding and avoidance uncomfortable. And the only way to do that is through repetition. You have to take action when you don't feel like it, endure the discomfort, and survive it. Your brain will notice. It will start to learn that discomfort isn't dangerous. And gradually the resistance will weaken, not disappear, but weaken enough that you can move through it. This process takes time, longer than you want it to, and it requires you to act without seeing immediate results. To trust that the accumulation of small actions is creating change in your brain, even when you can't feel it. This is why most people give up. They take action for a few days, don't see dramatic changes, and conclude it's not working. But neuroplasticity is slow. Your brain doesn't rewire overnight. It rewires through consistent repetition over weeks and months. And if you're not willing to invest that time, you'll stay stuck. Here's the part where I'm supposed to tell you that you can do it, that you just need to believe in yourself, that you're capable of amazing things if you just try. But I'm not going to tell you that, because you've heard it before, and it didn't work. Motivation is temporary. Belief without action is delusion. And you don't need another pep talk that makes you feel good for an hour and changes nothing. What you need is honesty, brutal, uncomfortable honesty. Here it is. You're probably not going to change. Not because you can't, because you won't. Because changing requires a level of discomfort that most people, including you, aren't willing to endure. Because staying stuck is easier than doing the work. Because fantasizing about success is more pleasurable than dealing with the mundane difficulty of building it. The vast majority of people who recognize themselves in this description will not do anything differently after watching this. They'll feel seen, they'll feel understood, they'll think, yes, that's exactly my problem. And then they'll go right back to scrolling, right back to planning instead of doing, right back to the comfortable hell of unrealized potential, because that hell is familiar. And familiar beats unknown, even when unknown might be better. So let me ask you directly, are you different? Are you actually willing to do what it takes? Or are you just consuming this content as another form of procrastination? Another way to feel like you're working on your problems without actually working on them? If you're still here, if you haven't closed this already, then maybe you're in the small percentage that's actually ready for change. Not the change you've been fantasizing about, the real change. The uncomfortable, unglamorous daily grind of showing up when you don't feel like it. Let me tell you what that actually looks like, because it's not what you think. It doesn't look like a dramatic transformation. It doesn't look like waking up one day suddenly motivated and disciplined. It looks like dragging yourself to your desk when your brain is screaming at you to do literally anything else. It looks like producing work that embarrasses you and publishing it anyway. It looks like failing repeatedly in small ways and continuing despite the failures. It looks like boring consistency rather than bursts of inspired action. The people you admire, the ones who've actually accomplished things, they didn't have some special quality you lack. They just had a higher tolerance for doing things that feel bad. They could sit with discomfort for longer. They could override their brain's desire for immediate comfort in service of long-term goals. Not because they enjoyed it, because they valued the outcome more than they valued feeling. good in the moment. You can develop this tolerance, but you can't think your way to it. You have to build it through exposure, like building muscle. You have to progressively increase the weight. Start with a level of discomfort you can barely tolerate. Do it daily. Let your brain adapt, then increase. This is how discipline is built, not through willpower, through adaptation. And here's what nobody tells you. It never becomes enjoyable. The people who work consistently haven't found some secret to making hard work fun. They've just normalized discomfort. They've stopped expecting work to feel good. They've stopped waiting for motivation. They understand that action creates motivation more often than motivation creates action. So they act, and the motivation follows, sometimes. Let's address the identity issue head on, because this is probably the deepest obstacle. You've built your self-concept around being someone with unrealized potential, someone who's better than their current circumstances, someone who's going to do something significant someday. And this identity has benefits. It lets you feel superior. It lets you judge others from a perceived position of untested ability. It gives you an excuse for why your life doesn't match your vision. This identity is also killing you, because maintaining it requires you to never fully test yourself, to never put your abilities on the line, to never risk discovering that maybe you're just average, so you stay in the safety of potential. Never attempting enough to fail, but also never attempting enough to succeed. Letting go of this identity is terrifying, because if you're not the person with enormous untapped potential, who are you? You're just someone doing something, trying, failing, learning, building. Maybe succeeding eventually, maybe not. You become ordinary in the process of attempting to become extraordinary. And your ego hates this. It would rather stay special in theory than become ordinary in practice. But here's the paradox. The only people who achieve extraordinary things are the ones willing to be ordinary for a long time first, the ones willing to suck at something publicly, the ones willing to produce mediocre work, the ones willing to be beginners. They don't protect their ego, they subordinate it to the process, and the process over time makes them actually special. Not special in potential, special in accomplishment. You have to kill the identity of the person with unrealized potential. You have to let yourself be someone who tries and fails, someone who produces bad work, someone who doesn't have it all figured out. This death of your current identity is what makes room for a new one. An identity built on action rather than fantasy, on what you actually do rather than what you could do if you tried. Here's what the next 3 months look like if you actually commit. Not the fantasy version, the real version. You're going to feel resistance every single day. You're going to wake up and not want to do the work. You're going to do it anyway, badly at first. You're going to produce things you're embarrassed by. You're going to want to quit multiple times. You're going to have days where you slip back into old patterns, where you waste time, where you feel like you've made no progress. You're going to compare yourself to people who are further along and feel discouraged. You're going to doubt whether it's worth it. You're going to question whether you're cut out for this. You're going to have internal arguments about whether you should just give up and accept a more modest life. And through all of this, you have to keep showing up. That's the deal. That's what change actually costs. The people who make it through this phase aren't more talented than you. They're more stubborn. They're willing to feel stupid for longer. They're willing to suck at something for months before they get marginally better. They don't have some reserve of motivation you lack. They just don't let lack of motivation stop them. They've decoupled action from feeling. They do it regardless. And over time, that regardless compounds into results. After 3 months of this, you won't be where you want to be. You probably won't even be close. But you'll be different, not in some dramatic, visible way, in small internal ways. You'll have proven to yourself that you can keep a commitment, that you can override your brain's resistance, that you can build something through consistency. And that proof, that evidence that you're not who you used to be, that's the foundation everything else is built on. Let me tell you what's going to happen right now. You're going to close this. You're going to feel a surge of determination. You're going to tell yourself that this is it. This is the moment everything changes. You might even take one small action. And then tomorrow, or the day after, or next week, you're going to fall back into your old patterns. Because one video doesn't override years of conditioning. One moment of clarity doesn't rewire your brain. And when you fall back, you have a choice. You can interpret it as evidence that you can't change, that you're fundamentally broken, that this just isn't for you. Or you can interpret it as information, as data about what conditions make you slip, as feedback about what systems you need, as a normal part of the process of change. The people who succeed are the ones who fall and get back up, the ones who fail and try again, the ones who understand that setbacks are part of the path, not proof that you're on the wrong path. So when you slip, don't spiral. Don't let one bad day become a bad week. Don't let one failure become identity. Just notice what happened. Adjust if you can. And start again. Tomorrow. Not perfectly. Just again. Because the accumulation of agains, what creates change, not the perfect start, not the dramatic transformation, just the willingness to keep returning to the work even after you failed at it. Here's the final thing you need to understand. No one is coming to save you from yourself. No perfect system. No magic productivity hack. No inspiring content. This is it. You either change or you don't. You either do the work or you continue fantasizing about it. And that choice, that very simple choice between action and inaction, is made moment by moment, day by day, not once, repeatedly, forever. The good news is that it gets easier. The neural pathways strengthen. The identity shifts. The person who acts becomes who you are rather than who you're trying to be. But that only happens if you survive the initial phase where it's hard and you suck and nothing feels worth it. Most people don't survive that phase. They quit before the benefits compound. They give up right before it would have gotten easier. You have to decide if you're willing to be one of the few who doesn't quit, who endures the discomfort long enough for it to become normal, who values the outcome more than the comfort, who's willing to look stupid and fail and try again anyway, because that's what it takes. Nothing less, nothing easier, just that, repeatedly, until it works or you die. Those are the options. Everything else is fantasy. You're not going to feel ready, you're not going to feel motivated, you're probably not even going to feel hopeful. And you're going to do it anyway, because the alternative, continuing to live in the gap between who you are and who you could be, is worse than the discomfort of trying. At least it should be. If it's not, you're not ready. And that's okay. Come back when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing. Until then, enjoy your potential. It's all you have.